how do you see the girls' education and how it is important?
Yeah, well, I think if I'm speaking from a Muslim point of view or Islamic history point of view, girls' education has been always very important. The problem was that what kind of education should be given to the girls and what are the subjects they should teach. That was the more paid attention, and that was because in the pre-modern period people gave more importance to family and women's role, especially girls' role in that family, because she was also a working member, and because of that they had a very limited idea of education. But in the modern period, she is no longer only a housewife or a mother, but she is also partner in the housemaking, in the overall family's progress, and she should be a partner to not only to the children's welfare but also to the husband's welfare. So in that case she would be working also, and she would be helping all the members of the family, children's education, all that. So her role now is much more wider than it was in the pre-modern period. And then in the general overall society also, because women's role has been more proactive. So for that we must train our girls from the very beginning, so that they can not only play their role in family but also in the society. And now in Pakistan we have also their role for the politics, for other jobs. So I think girls' education becomes very, very important. Also because the number of the female population is almost almost equal, or sometimes even in some communities higher than the male members. So you cannot just ignore population which is 50% or more than 50%.
Definitely women and females should be educated. But when they come to the interpretation of the education, then the religious, most of the people who are religious minded, they are saying the education, Islamic education, and then, but other people are saying education is not Islamic and it's it's a knowledge, the human heritage. Means there is a conflict. How do you see this one? What's your opinion?
I agree. This conflict is on the perspective of education, but also more than that, on the perspective of role of women in society. Because in the pre-modern period, as I said earlier, the role of women was considered very limited, and then comes the modernity with the colonial period, and in modernity the conservative people become more sensitive about the role of women, because now the woman is coming out, going to school, going to office and all that, and they consider it from a particular point of view, and they think it's going to damage our social values, our moral values. So because of that, they are also very skeptic about the modern girls' education, going to their schools or colleges. So all these, some of these are real issues, and some of these are just for the sake of discussion. But I think overall, Pakistan has grown out of these precautions, because the number of girls going to schools and colleges has increased from before, but still there are problems. Okay, now we have to look very sympathetically to those people who are facing these problems or thinking of these problems. For them, Islam, Muslim society, Muslim world is being threatened by the Western civilization. So they see everything in that perspective, not only education, but their way of life, their politics, even countries. So we have to gain their confidence by arguing with them, by looking at them, at their arguments sympathetically. More recently, the problem is no longer of that type of cautious attitude.
Yes.
It's now a politics, because this group of people who have chosen extremist or forceful use of force in their politics, now they have an agenda, and for them the more, the target or the focus becomes women and girls, because if they have the equality, if they have the freedom, then it will be counterproductive for their agenda. So that's why they don't want girls' schools, they don't want girls' education, and they are very much consciously opposing it. On the other hand, you must also see that during this period, number of girls' madrasas have increased, which simply means that they are not against girls' education, and they are not looking at only the avenues of the girls' education in the pre-modern period, because in these girls' madrasas they are teaching them their own ideologies, their own political ways. So this is more a type of conflict of ideologies and the politics of ideologies, and this particular phase, which is recent, we have to look at it not from the academic point of view, but from a very political point of view.
In Pakistan.
In Pakistan.
Look, sir, when we see in another Muslim countries, and definitely they have gone through the same process that we are now experiencing, from colonial periods to then independence, and then they are also improving. For example, UAE, Bangladesh, then Indonesia, Malaysia, they are doing a very good job especially in female education. But why? Where do you see that there was a problem in history that started with us?
Yeah, I think then we have to look at from the perspective of what politically has been happening in Pakistan, because this is more than other countries a Pakistani problem. And the problem is that the religious groups have become more and more politicized. Compared to other countries, our religious groups are more politicized, and also they are more organized politically as well as socially. The number of madrasas, the number of institutions, also if you look at it, in the media, they have political they have TV channels, they have newspapers, they have journals. So they are a big political organization, and they are political organizations. Okay. Now my own thinking is that from the very beginning in Pakistan, first there was a polarization between the liberal and the religious. Liberal was not all the time secular, it was also religious liberal, but it was a contest between them. But since 1950s, it turned into sectarianism also.
Yes.
And then every sect organized itself into political parties, into religious and school educational organizations. Now the problem with how these sects look at themselves, I think that was not watched or not studied by our policy makers. In fact, in our constitution, when the Article 238 and also in other areas, when amendment was made, they gained political power and they became an organized opposition. And I was mentioning that in 1985 an amendment was made in the constitution which says that the implementation of Islamic law in a way would be subject to the sectarianism. The term was that Islam or the Islamic law will be interpreted according to the sects of the people. So which means that if a person is a Barelvi and he comes to a dispute, or he brings a suit in the court about family law, so then the court is bound to look at what the Brailwi thinks or what the Brailwi say about the family. Luckily in Pakistan there are only two law schools, the Shia or the Jafri school and the Hanafi school. The other schools like Ahl Hadith school is not recognized, but these two are recognized. But in the general parlance, we think all of these different, what in Urdu they call masalik, we also consider them as legal schools. Brailwi, Deobandi, Ahl Hadith, Wahhabi, and then among the Shi'is also Ismaili and all that. So because of that, it got a constitutional protection and it got a legal protection. Constitutional protection means that wherever appointment or any position of the ulama is concerned, the criterion of sectarianism will apply. Although it's not in the constitution, but people think that in the Council of Islamic Ideology, in the Ministry of Religious Affairs, in Federal Shariat, or any religious committees or which is appointed by the government, the representation of all the sects must be there, and you can hear it in the press and even from the ulama. So because of that, they got more and more protections from the constitution, and in a way then they were legalized and they were authorized to take that action. Now because of all this position, now they have a say in all matters, especially on education. And lately, as I said, that this political Islam, which is a global phenomenon, in which they want the Islamic identity to be expressed on the global level,